Hey guys, what's up? So Amir made a video probably about a month ago now in which he analyzed the way that latency affects PvP and specifically the way that it affects roll catching. And the thing that he found was that at higher latencies, especially if your opponent's wearing a blood ring, you really can't roll catch them, and it has to do with the way the hit detection in the game works. And if you haven't watched the video, I definitely recommend that you go and watch it. It was really eye-opening. I think it confirmed for a lot of us what we had suspected, that not only is roll catching difficult under high latency, but it can be downright impossible, especially if your opponent's wearing the blood ring. Of course, there's a number of ways that latency affects this game. This video you're seeing right here will show one of the more quirky ways. But I was talking to Kandemir, and he and I were kind of curious about, how exactly does the latency affect it? Like, where are kind of the cutoff points? Because knowing where the cutoff points is can be really helpful, and knowing whether your opponent's wearing the blood ring or not can help adjust your strategy, whether you should be going for roll catches or not. And as if to kind of put a point on all this and make you realize how important this information is, in order to start our test, we set the password here to VPN so that we could do some tests under a VPN, right? I come out here out onto Pontiff's porch and I see a bunch of signs down with the password VPN, which is pretty scary, really. So let me tell you a bit about what we did and how we recorded this. First of all, huge thanks to Kandemir for helping me test this out and going through all these tests, and it was pretty monotonous. Kandemir and I essentially did a number of tests where he would try to roll catch me as I spammed roll into the wall, spam roll into the wall just so you stay still, and we would do it both with and without the blood ring, and then we did it with varying amounts of latency. And the way we controlled the latency was via a VPN. I used a VPN by the name of Private Internet Access, which actually I have to say I commend the creators. It's actually pretty difficult to get a good amount of latency like we wanted. We had to really play around with this across a number of different locations. We started off initially with places like Chicago. Now I'm in the US, Kandemir's in Turkey, so our background latency was probably on the order of about 170 milliseconds. That's one direction, so a packet to go both directions. It's obviously 340 milliseconds. We started off with like Chicago and then Canada, and it was still pretty difficult to get the amount of latency that we wanted. We noticed that the latency would only go up by maybe 30-40 milliseconds. You can see here, now we're in Canada. And what we found is that at these lower levels of latency, without the blood ring, Kandemir was able to pretty quickly make the adjustment and would still be able to roll catch me pretty consistently. Of course, as you might imagine, once you have the blood ring in, it becomes considerably more difficult to roll catch somebody. You can see here, he can't hit me really at all. Although we did have that one experience, I made sure I left it in here, where he actually was able to pull me out of a roll with a backstab, which was pretty strange considering that he couldn't really hit me otherwise. You would think a backstab would be less likely to happen than even being able to hit me. But again, latency just does weird things to this game at higher levels of latency. But as long as it was, say, 210 milliseconds maybe or lower, he could still hit me occasionally as I spammed roll. However, once you got to about 250 milliseconds, like right here where I'm connected through Brazil, then all of a sudden it really becomes impossible to touch me. In fact, you'll see here, we did some other countries where we tested it out, but in some sense there wasn't much point, because once you get to this level of latency, you can't roll catch anyone. Now, my theory is that with the right amount of higher latency, you might be able to catch somebody on their next roll. So even though you might go to roll catch them on roll one, you're gonna whiff that because of the latency, but the latency conceivably could be high enough that you could catch them on their second roll. We weren't really able to replicate that. We did try a little bit, not too hard though. I'm really pretty confident that would be possible, but again, you'd have to have just the right amount of latency for a tactic like that to work. So just, as a way to kind of test some other theories out, even though we realized beyond 250 milliseconds, there wasn't much advantage in continuing to test, we decided to kind of push further. Now, one challenge is that there's really kind of two measurements of latency and ping for us. One, and really maybe even three, there's the geographic distance between the two of us, and then when you add in the VPN, you can think of the total distance from me to the VPN, and then from the VPN to Kandemir. And when I bring up the VPN, it obviously defaults to the closest physical location, but depending on where I connected, even though further locations would have higher pings to me, they didn't always result in having a higher ping overall between me, the VPN, and Kandemir, which was sort of interesting. So you got to make sure that you really check that stuff. We also ran into some problems which I think are attributable to caching, where he would look to see how far away I was, and I think he was getting reports on my old IP. But you can see here, even at far distances with the VPN in Turkey and high latency, Kandemir is still able to roll catch me without the blood ring, but the moment the blood ring comes on, he really can't. You'll see where he does hit me sometimes, but it's usually because I'm out of stamina, and it's at the very end. But while I have stamina, while I'm rolling, he can't touch me. I don't think he hit me a single time. And of course, we tried many different weapons, a lot of curved swords. We tried daggers, obviously. We did a lot of that, and you'll see here in a moment. We also brought out the crossbow, and we did some tests with that too. So then the question also becomes, well, okay, what do I do about this? What options are open to me as a player? And G9, if you follow his streams, has been spending a lot of time talking about this and trying to figure out approaches that might help. I don't know. I think daggers with poison or any kind of poison damage are really one of your best options, because poison will continue to build even on ghost hits. Definitely give that a try. You'll see here too, one of the things that we tried out, Kandemir used both the Avalon and he used the repeating crossbow. And when you have the blood ring on, it's not going to help. And here you can see under really high levels of latency, like in Australia, he wasn't able to hit me even without the blood ring. I do not have the blood ring here for the Australia clips. And we even tried like bow glitching. Interestingly enough, bow glitching with the machine gun did work under high amounts of latency without the blood ring. So that is always an option, guys. Well, thanks to Kandemir for your help. I hope you guys got something out of this. Thanks for checking in.